Coach Teevens, thanks for joining us here at DartmouthSports.com. It's been a long year, certainly, not one filled with competition, but one with practices here and there, small groups gathering at times. But, the spring, you finally got to have a bit more of your team together on the field and got to evaluate some talent. What did you see out there this spring?
Well, it was nice just to be able to do it again. For many of these guys, 2 years that they haven't been together. And some of the guys, the best part of their day was coming to practice. But it was good to see our guys work. We did some positional development type things for about 7 or 8 practices. And then we'll get into our spring practice session where as we get closer and closer to spring break or the spring practice opportunity, some of the restrictions were relaxed a little bit. So we actually had a regular spring practice. Safety, as you know, is always big with us. So we didn't tackle. We tackled a lot of stuff, just not each other. But it was just fun to see the enthusiasm, the energy, and the athleticism across the board.
You had a bunch of new faces out there, freshmen who hadn't seen the field in the fall. But because you had smaller groups out there, I imagine you got to evaluate those people more closely and people got more reps that were actually there on campus.
Well, exactly right, Rick. The freshmen, the incoming freshmen, they had more coaching than they ever would have received in previous years. Normally, a young guy comes in, we go through preseason. There's a lot of talent in the program, so not a lot of those guys will see a great deal of time, and then they're working in prep squad mode from that point forward. This past fall, we had only freshmen and juniors on campus, so we had an opportunity to have the older guys really work closely with the younger guys and really get to know them. The numbers were smaller. We had roughly 50 on campus. And then when we get back into the spring, now we had 70. But the recall from the fall with the young guys in particular was exceptional. They had far more repetition than they ever would have had. It is a very, very good class for us. And then combining that with an additional 25 guys that came back to be with us, it was very productive. And I see our youngest class, which is talented, really pushing some of those upper classes because of the knowledge and the experience that they normally would not have had.
You got to have your spring game. You played it on a Thursday night, I believe. I'm curious, without tackling, those guys haven't tackled anybody, any person for so long. Was it difficult for them to hold back in that spring game?
It was funny. The guys said they were getting itchy. And some of my strikers, as we'll put it, just say, "Coach, man, come on, man, we got to do something. We got to hit somebody." And we just back them off and let them go tackle the MVP a few more times. It's always a question in people's minds, well, if you don't do it, but we've been practicing like this for a long period. We tackle basically 10 opportunities per year on game day. And yes, we skipped a year. These guys, it's like riding a bike. You don't forget that. And the other thing is you become more excited about the opportunity to do it again. The way that we practice, we actually get a lot of technical work. So I don't worry about it. Our guys will be fine. We have a bunch of hitters, so we'll be fine come Valparaiso.
Well, you just mentioned Valparaiso. First game of the season next fall, going to have a full season. It's got to be exciting for the players, got to be exciting for the coaching staff. What do you see this team doing? I mean, everybody's going to be in the same boat in the Ivy League. They haven't played a game in 2 years. You're going to have some non-conference components that have played much more recently, but it's going to be a lot of new faces on the field this fall, I think, across the board in the league.
Yeah, very true. I mean, we have 2 classes that have never played football at Dartmouth or in the Ivies for that matter. So we're all somewhat in the same boat. There's a balanced playing surface, so to speak, within the league. Outside the league, and we play 2 FCS playoff contenders, Valparaiso and Sacred Heart. So very, very talented groups. UNH had a limited season as well. So is that advantageous? We'll find out. We thought about it from an Ivy perspective. I think and I thought it was the right decision. Injury and COVID concerns, so we didn't do it. Guys that get nicked up in the spring, they may not have an opportunity to play in the fall. So you miss, in essence, 2 seasons. So we just play it as it comes. Valpo is a good football team. We're playing out there. It should be a good Midwestern draw for our program. And a lot of folks from the Chicagoland area, Indianapolis, St. Louis, Kansas City, they all come to see us, and our guys are excited. It's fun to take one of those special trips, once a year.
So, Coach, I'm going to ask you one last thing. How has the Teevens family managed themselves during COVID? How did you get through COVID yourself and your family?
Yeah, Yeah, you'd have to ask my wife. We're still married currently, to the best of my knowledge, but she saw far more of me than she probably cared to. The recruiting on the road just gone. The office, you weren't in the office. Everything was Zoomed. But looking out, we stayed in steady contact with our players. Zoom meetings once a week, and then another time with the positional guys. Zoom meetings with your coaches. So it was a different way to get together. But the physical proximity, just say, and she said, "Don't you want to go out and go for a bike ride? Don't you want to get out and go for a run?" So but we survived. And the nice thing, I think the worst is behind us. We've been very encouraging with guys with vaccinations, and a good percentage of the team has them, the entire coaching staff. And that's going to open up the campus to a greater extent. And we'll look forward to going back to the way it was a couple years ago.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks for joining us today. And we're going to check back in with you here during the preseason come August and September and see what you've got going here and get ready for Valparaiso.
Good stuff. Rick, as always, appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.